Today, we're looking at Private Reserve's Rose Rage. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Private Reserve's Rose Rage is a pink ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples, I put the ink into a different pen for a day, I then put it into a Fountain Pen Revolutions Himalaya with a flex nib to take my notes for this video. Now before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this is a very pink, moving its way up, and then you start to get this kind of magenta tone at the top of the chromatography. Now this isn't just the ink darkening, you can see a separation of the two colors, so this is a mix. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And if it wasn't for the D at the top of the filter paper, I don't know that you would be able to really tell the difference of what these two inks are. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, this ink does not like to be reactivated. It blew out, parts of it become a bit illegible. I would not use this as a note taker if I like to go back and highlight. Surprisingly, looking at that, water is reactivating and lifting off all the darkest tones, but not the pink that we saw at the bottom of the chromatography. A lot of pink is left behind. Pen flush with only 30 seconds. You can easily see the dots of the rhodia paper coming through. It is really starting to remove that ink. Now, we're not seeing the white of the paper. However, I do believe that it's getting light enough with only that 30 seconds that pen flush is all that you would need to remove this from your pen. And the 1/3 bleach solution, as is normal, is completely removing it, but there should be no need to use that. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Private Reserve's Rose Rage has a viscosity of 2.78, making it normal, the drier side of normal, but still normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Private Reserve's Rose Rage has an average dry time of 9 seconds, making this a pretty fast drying ink, although that is not really unusual in very light toned inks. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It has spots of shading, like the T and the E in Private are darker than the rest of the word. The E in Rage is darker than the rest of the word. The downstroke of the R is darker than the rest of Rose. Nice shading. The extra fine is the same tones that we get with the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and lovely shading throughout. Like in Quick, it starts dark, gets light, and gets dark again. Brown is a nice uniform tone, but Fox goes light to dark. Jumps, starts light, gets dark, and gets light again. Beautiful, and 4 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tones that we see with the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and even better shading than we see with the extra fine. Dark to light to dark. Brown starts light, gets dark, gets light again. Fox starts light, gets dark. Jump starts light and gets dark. Beautiful. 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us some color variation, but I think we see a lot more color variation in the writing itself. And the smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River. Now there's a bleed spot in the scrubby where I'm putting it on like an animal, just an angry badger scratching the hell out of it. That's me. That's not the ink or the paper. Other than that, we have no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade, but it is a very nice pink, hard color to find, where it's not like I don't like pink because I'm a guy kind of thing. I enjoy a nice pink ink, but they're hard to find that make me happy with them, and this is a very nice one. The extra fine is the same tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. The medium is a much darker tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get any color variation here. And the smear test, you could recover this, even on Tomoe River. Now, Rhodia. Again, a spot comes through. It's a scratch from me putting the ink on during a scrubby. Other than that, no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and I don't believe I'm really seeing shading with the 1.1. But along comes the extra fine. It's the same tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It has spots of shading. Like the K in quick is a little bit darker. The X in fox, a little bit darker. Jumps is a darker word than dry right underneath it. We get a nice light toned line, and then the Z is a little darker than the rest of lazy. 4 is a little darker than the words around it. So nice shading here, 4 seconds to dry. The medium is a much darker tone than the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading, 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows very little color variation, but we got more up in the writing sample. The medium showed none, and we got none. And the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. So I decided to test this a lot on some cheaper papers. This is composition notebook. This is like a lab notebook. The only spot it bleeds through is where I'm putting it on stupid thick in the scrubby, and we get some light ghosting, very light ghosting. This is a medium up top. The medium has no feathering and no spread, no halo, sheen, or shade, but it looks great and it works great. The extra fine is the same tone as the medium. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. The scrubby does show some color variation, but I did not get it up here. And the smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared on composition notebook while you were writing. I like composition notebooks. Toothy paper, but it actually, my experience is it handles the fountain pen inks pretty well. So this is Mead notebook paper. We get a lot of bleed spots. It did not come through the paper and touch the page underneath, and you might even be able to use it in the writing area for both sides. That's a user call. I wouldn't, but many people would. A lot of my students do use both sides. I have one student that uses the fountain pens. I put her on this pink ink. She loves it. She saw it in the pen one day. I said, when I finish what I got to do with it, you can have it. And so I got a second sample. I let her have that, told her what it is and where to find it. This is the medium up top. Now we get no spread, but we get tiny little feathers all over it. Not a big deal. Wouldn't stop me from using it. No halo, no sheen, and no shade. The extra fine has no feather and no spread. No halo, no sheen, and no shade. 1 second to dry. The scrubby shows a little bit of color variation, but we didn't get any. And the smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. This is a fantastic ink, especially on some of these cheaper papers. So we go check the Moleskin, the notorious Moleskin. Now the medium comes through, the scrubby comes through, the extra fine has spots coming through. I don't think it would stop you from using the back of the page. It performs very well here, considering how Moleskin does. The medium up top, it has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Way to go, Moleskin! 1 on your side. The extra fine. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 2 seconds to dry. Another thumbs up for the Moleskin. You got 1 on the board. Way to go, Moleskin. I love when I see Moleskin actually get 1, just because there's so many people that like it. The scrubby shows a little bit of color variation, but we got none. And the smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And that is all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Private Reserve's Rose Rage, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted a nice bright blue. I went with Noodler's blue because that is such a great prime blue. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Private Reserve's Rose Rage? Pink inks are in a difficult color to find where it's not so bright it's screaming obnoxious, and it's not so light you can't read it. This is a great in the middle. This is a fantastic pink. You can absolutely read it without hurting your eyes, which makes it nice. It's a great alternative to using reds. It could be a great alternative to using orange, which I frequently use as a second color. It's well behaved. This ink is a winner. Thanks for watching.